Warning, the Catholic Man Show contains high levels of manliness. It's simple, really. You either want to grow in virtue and holiness, or you want to be a sissy, whiny baby. If you choose to move forward, grab your whiskey glass, because the Catholic Man Show is starting right now.
And welcome to the Catholic Man Show. We're on the Lord's team, the winning side, so raise your glass. Adam Minahan here, sitting with David Niles to my left, out here with about 40 of our closest friends at Clear Creek Monastery in beautiful Holbert, Oklahoma. I have a special guest this evening for everybody. Dave, why don't I let you introduce our guest?
Okay, so our guest is Father Brother Nesbitt.
Yes.
He's a father
And a brother.
and a brother. So you're like a brother.
Yes.
For Brother Nesbitt.
Some of my cousins call me Father, Brother, Cousin, Rob. But so
Rob.
every monk makes his vows, and he's a brother in that community. But then some ordained priests. So I happen to be one of those. So Father Nesbitt is what I usually go by.
I have a brother-in-law who, to my children, is Uncle Father Sean. So I kind of get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not only that, but you were ordained by Cardinal Raymond Burke. Is that correct?
Correct.
What?
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I want to be ordained by him, but it was like, well, no, I can't do that. So
You're already married.
Right,
so
yeah.
it doesn't work, yeah.
I'm very happily in my vocation. Yeah.
Yes, good. Yeah, we as a monastery, we are independent of the diocese. We're not under the local bishop, so we just invite prelates who who would want to come and ordain us. So that's just kind of we've had Bishop Conley, Bishop Slattery, the former bishop, has done many ordinations.
Mm-hmm.
Bishop Coakley, Archbishop of Oklahoma,
Mm-hmm.
and Cardinal Burke. So
Very cool.
And what year was that?
2016.
Okay.
Okay, and we're out here at Clear Creek Abbey. I don't know, did we say that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So here we are. Father Nesbitt. What should we call you? Father or brother?
Whatever you want.
I knew you were going to say that. Okay.
Okay. But yeah, so this is our second annual Catholic Man Show campout. That's what we're doing right now. If this is your first time listening to the Catholic Man Show, we do three things every episode. We open, review, and enjoy a manly beverage. We highlight a man gear, and we have a manly discussion. This evening, we had a little bit of a mishap, or actually, last night we had a little bit of a mishap. We had the opportunity to try Clear Creek Saison by Broken Arrow Brewing. However, Andrew was very, very kind to give that to us. However, unfortunately, the CO2 did not work.
Something was wrong.
And it leaked overnight. So we did not have the opportunity to have it on the show. But Joe was kind enough to bring it up to us. We got a chance to taste it a little bit, but
It was very good.
yes, I wish we had some for
I'm going
this
to go
evening,
have some
but-
more eventually.
So we have a plan B. Men, you're supposed to have be prepared.
Be prepared.
And so we have it. Luckily, don't worry, we have a plan B. You want to break it in? You want to break it open?
Yes, so we're about to open Quiet Man. It's an Irish whiskey. I have never had it, but I've heard about it, and I've heard many good things.
And I'm like a big John Wayne fan. It's kind of about the show. Oh yeah, I'll get. No, he's doing that for him. He's not doing it for
All right, good.
Father, each segment we try to highlight virtue. We try to highlight a specific virtue. With this being the quiet man, the obvious virtue that we could talk about is silence.
Yeah.
And I think you know a thing or two about silence, being out here at Clear Creek.
Yes.
So let's cheers, and then I'd like you to maybe give a reflection on silence.
Sure.
We're on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
So raise your glass. Cheers to Jesus.
Iu bensium Jesu.
So,
Do you know what that means? Did I say that right? What is in Latin? Iu bensium Jesu.
E ubensium Jesu.
Yeah. I think it means cheers to Jesus.
I haven't heard that.
Yeah. Great. Google lied to me. Lied to.
Yes, that's not how I would say it.
How would you say it?
I guess you'd say, I don't know, we don't often cheers in Latin in the monastery, so I have to confess my ignorance. Probably something along the European lines of like salutem
Okay.
octo tibi or something like that.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll look into that.
Yes.
So the virtue of silence.
Yes.
You're a choir monk, not a lay monk, as we
Yes.
kind of discussed. Talk a little bit about how the virtue of silence plays a role in your life.
Yes, Saint Benedict wrote a chapter on silence, De Tacitunitate, and all the Desert Fathers and monks have recognized its importance for the life of prayer that a monk tries to live. He separates himself from the world in order to draw closer to God, and that separation isn't going to help you very much if you're always talking and going through all these thoughts and not focused on the one thing necessary. So we have definite rules that help us attain that silence. There's the grand silence from after Compline. Compline's about 8:35 until the next morning at prime, which is also about 8:30. So that whole night, there's no talking except for an emergency, or sometimes guests arrive after that hour and you have to show them the room. Then throughout the day, we try to limit our speech to just necessary matters about work or study, or when, of course, you're seeing your father abbot or spiritual director or confessor. And then after lunch is when we have a time for speaking, for recreation. We just, gather together and talk and walk around. So that's can be half an hour, 45 minutes. On Sunday, it's an hour. On Thursdays, we take a longer walk around our property or outside our property for, maybe like 3 hours. So in that way, you're just kind of disciplining that desire to always be going out of yourself and expressing yourself so that you can turn inward and to where God dwells.
I always had this question. Obviously, the silence is or not, maybe not easy, but you exercise it all the time. So when you come in contact with guys who are from the outside world, do we just seem super loud and obnoxious? I would feel like that. I would.
You
probably
can say yes.
You can say
totally
yes.
say yes.
Well, I don't see it that way. Sometimes there are guests who are like that, but they often easily fall into line. There's 50 men in black habits standing there silently, so they're usually not going to be too rambunctious where we meet them, in the refectory during our meal or in the hallways. So it's usually not a problem.
Mm-hmm. So how long have you been here at Clear Creek?
I've been here since 2007, so about 11 years.
Do you remember when you first got here and, first having to immerse yourself in this life of silence? Was it difficult? What were the kind of immediate benefits that you saw change in your life?
I guess that ability to focus on your reading, the Lectio Divina in the morning, reading scripture and life of prayer. But you also find out that withdrawing from the world and its distractions and its conversations, that there's a lot of interior noise which you might not notice in the world. So then you have, your memories or hopes, regrets, things like that are more present until you're, grow more in virtue and in stability in that calling of being a monk. So often it's kind of a difficult experience to enter into that silence.
How long do you think it would take? How long did it take you to grow and strengthen those muscles of silence, so to speak?
I'm not sure. I guess naturally I was a little more introverted and quiet, so that's part of silence. To be a virtue, it has to be ordered to something good, because you could be silent because you're angry at somebody, you don't want to talk to them,
sure.
or just by your temperament. So some might have more difficulty than others. And I don't really recall any point or length of time. It just kind of blends together, and you always have to work on it. There's always distractions, and then since not quite 3 years ago, I was named as the assistant guest master. So that forces me to talk a little more with guests and meet with guests. And so then you kind of have to readjust to that, to not let that conversation and contacts with the world kind of take over your thinking and, yeah.
Okay.
Opening up some vents
Yeah.
here in the tent.
Just to let everybody know, that's what that was.
Just talking about the virtues of silence.
Okay, so you gave us a talk recently, yesterday on St. Thomas Aquinas, which was
Yes.
interesting. Maybe a curveball for you, as you kind of put it, with being a Benedictine monk. What are you giggling
Oh, I was
about?
just saying, thank you, David.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for doing it.
But you actually talked about how you that St. Thomas Aquinas was in the Benedictine monastery for a
Yes.
little while.
Yep.
I was not aware of
I
that.
didn't know that either.
Yeah, so as an oblate, so 5 years old, he was given over to the Benedictines to be a monk, and he stayed there till he was about 14. Like I said, the abbot kind of suggested that he leave. There was a mutual understanding there.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a practice recognized by St. Benedict, that fathers could entrust their children to make that decision for them to become monks, and they grow up in that environment.
Mm-hmm. It just strikes me as a good example of the providence of God, that he can, he leads you on such an interesting path sometimes, and you don't know why you're doing one thing to achieve some other greater good, but just to trust in him.
Right.
Yeah. So when we get back, we're going to break into the man gear, which is a monk's habit. We're here with Father Nesbitt out of Clear Creek Abbey. Everybody give us a manly, we're on the Lord's team.
The winning side, so raise your glass.
Cheers to Jesus. And welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. I'm David Niles, here with Adam Minahan. Our special guest is Father Brother Nesbitt. I was trying to remember what your nephews or your cousins said your first name. Rob.
Yep.
Father Robert Nesbitt.
Yes. And most people do call me Father, so Father Nesbitt's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
It's just like I wish. So either one is fine, right?
Yes.
Brother is safer, because one time I was out here for the work day and I called a brother, Father so-and-so,
Yes.
and he's like, oh, I'm not a priest.
Yeah. You can't tell any difference by our dress.
Right.
That one's a priest or one's not, because we're all monks. So
Mm-hmm.
we're the monk's garb.
I've made that mistake.
Yeah.
Yes. I actually asked one of the lay monks to give me a blessing, not knowing that he was a lay monk.
Yeah.
And he kind of laughed at me, which was understandable. I mean, I would have laughed too. But real quick, I have to do some due diligence here. I misspoke. It was a great opportunity for me to grow in humility. I misspoke. I said Andrew, and I meant Austin from
Broken Arrow
Arrow
Brewing. Yeah.
Yes. So thank you, Austin. I apologize for butchering the name, but
And go check them out, because I really like, they've got a good setup over there.
They do.
A lot of good beer.
yes, and they've been having a bunch of beer named after Clear Creek, obviously, which is cool. They have a Benedictine monk stout, I believe, or anyway, go check them out. We're gonna try to do a live show over there at some point.
Okay, so the man gear for today is a monk's habit. You, Father, have been wearing the monk's habit for 11 years now,
Yes.
as you said. I would like to talk to you about the theological significance of the habit, and ultimately, how does that apply? Do those principles apply to the layman just in his everyday life?
Yes.
So what is the purpose of the habit?
The habit is to manifest that separation from the world and consecration to God. So it looks different than what other people wear. Back when monks first came into existence, the beginning of the 4th century or so, they had a distinctive habit, and it's varied throughout the ages, and different orders had different habits, but they all manifest that otherness. And that's, I guess, the essential purpose of the habit. That you're now consecrated to God. In the ancient times, the senators, the soldiers, the philosophers, they all had a distinctive dress. So it's just kind of a natural part of society that what you do, your profession, has a exterior sign. So the monks naturally took that up, and then also developed kind of theological significances to that habit. So the girdle, which is just a belt,
a very long belt,
Yes,
a very
very long.
awesome looking belt.
yeah, it's long. I don't know what they used back then, but I guess it comes from like the prophets wearing leather girdle, a sheepskin and leather girdle or something. And so then the fathers take that and say, well, it's a reminder of the virtue of purity, to have a tight control over your reins, I guess. And then also that it's made of dead animal skin, manifesting that the monk should be dead to the world and to the carnal desires. And then we have the tunic, just the first covering. I don't think there's anything too special with that, in that back in the day, everybody wore something similar. That is, they didn't wear pants. Most people didn't wear pants. And then you have a scapular with a hood attached. So then the hood also was back then a covering just for the elements, protect you from the elements. But then that also reminded the fathers of simplicity and innocence, in that infants, I guess, had kind of you cover their heads or have something like that. So it also could represent recollection. You put up your hood so that you don't gaze all around, and to have that.
Blinders.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have any prayers that you say when you put it on in the morning?
There are just, private prayers. When you're clothed and a man enters, he enters in his lay clothes. And then at some point, usually it's about a month or two, he receives the habit in a ceremony in the chapter room, and there are prayers for each one of those. And so for the tunic, it's about putting on the new man Christ. And also before, he's wearing, his suit jacket and a tie, and those are taken off. So it's, being taking off the old man and putting on the new man Christ. And then when they put on the belt, there's a prayer for chastity, purity. And then the scapular reminds one of the cross, bearing the yoke of Christ, the burden of Christ. And so there aren't any official or mandated prayers, but I'm sure many monks just call to mind those prayers that were said when they first received the habit, when they're putting it on.
So the scapular, for those who are listening on the radio or on the podcast, it's not like, I think a lot of people think,
Yes.
the scapular that they would wear just, with the Carmelite,
Yes.
the Carmelite brown scapular. But for you, it's a shoulder length.
Yes. Well, yeah, it goes over your shoulders. There's a hood attached to it, and it reaches down to the ankles, more or less, on both sides. And there's two parts. There's nothing joining the front and the back. And then the scapular that most people wear, the brown scapular, is just a vestige of that. So what they're doing is they're, in a way, participating in that Carmelite order, which was under the protection of the Blessed Virgin Mary, with those privileges attached to it. We have oblates of this monastery, people in the world or priests who want to be affiliated with our monastery, and we also give them a scapular. It's just a black piece of leather. So those are just kind of reminders of the religious habit.
The belt you're talking about reminded me a lot of the talk you gave us last night when you were talking about St. Thomas Aquinas.
Yes.
And he had that after he chased off the woman who
with
was
a firebrand.
who was maybe trying to seduce him, depending on what legend you believe in. He had the vision that he was being the belt of chastity. Is that what?
Girded with some ropes or some belt. Yeah.
So that's kind of similar to what the belt that you wear is supposed to represent.
Yes. And then all priests have prayers for their vestments, and when they put on the cincture, they also pray for that virtue.
So can you think of, I know this is kind of a hard question, but can you think of any ways that the everyday man can apply these basic principles of the habit? Like I wear a suit to work. I suppose I could kind of come up with my own significance to,
I see.
The things that I wear. I'm doing this to honor my clients, or just whatever, to take my own work more seriously. Do you have any thoughts about what we could do?
I guess the main thing would be that as Catholic men, you should look different, perhaps not by your dress, but by manifesting the virtues of Christ. So in the workplace, when men start discussing things that are unchaste and you don't partake, you might have to go on a tirade and rebuke them. You could, but just...
I prefer the flipping tables method.
Okay, there you go. You might get fired, so you also have to provide for your family.
Right,
so,
yeah.
But just things like that should mark you off as a Catholic man. Oh, he's Catholic, and that's why he doesn't partake in this with us. Or I guess that might be the main thing. Or, some might want to wear some external sign, the cross or something. I mean, that's, again, it's not mandated or necessary, but that could be something that somebody could do. Or just wearing underneath your scapular and reminding that when you are putting on your other clothes that maybe this is what's most important to me, and that's why it's closer to my heart, not an exterior.
Sure.
But
isn't there something about like the virtue of decorum here? Like, can't we tie the virtue of decorum into this? That there's a reason why men should dress up for Mass. On Sundays. There's a reason why you have a habit. There's a reason why Dave dresses in a suit and tie, working as a financial advisor. I mean, isn't that the virtue of decorum? Like, in the state of life that you're in, you should dress appropriately.
Yes, according to your state, and it's a sign of respect to the others you're dealing with. They don't want to see your muscles.
I don't know.
It's tough to hide them sometimes. In all humility.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. But yeah, another thing.
I was the one that said it. You didn't say it.
Another thought that comes to mind is this isn't something you wear, but something that maybe your office, if you have an office, how are you decorating your office? Because it's kind of a similar thing about, when people come into your office, can they tell that your space is set apart? Just that idea. What kind of things do you have on the wall? Yeah. Do you have
a picture of Our Lady or I guess there's a funny story because I was told ahead of time about the habit and things like that, and I went to public schools for the first 2 years of my life, and I wore a scapular at school until one day some kid on the playground made fun of me. He said, "Oh, are you wearing a bra?" And I, it's like, "No, this is scapular." But then, that kind of shamed me, and so I went back home to my mom and told my mom, "Oh, this kid made fun of me." And so then I switched to the miraculous medal on a metal chain. But I guess just, not being ashamed of the cross of Christ, I guess, to be a Christian. So
I always envision JP2's old picture that he has when he's working I think, where was it? It was manual labor. I can't remember what he was doing, but he was in manual labor, and he had his shirt off, and he had his scapular on still, in front of all of his coworkers.
Yeah. Because one thing too, just on the level of clothes, maybe would be simplicity too. The habit, I guess, looks kind of complicated, maybe, but we just wear this and we don't have other things. We have a work tunic, maybe, so we don't tear this up. But so simplicity in dress.
Yeah.
Excellent.
When we get back, we're going to jump into the conversation with Father Nesbitt, the manly topic. We're on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
So raise your glass. Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. Enjoying Quiet Man Irish whiskey. Talking with Father Nesbitt here at Clear Creek Monastery. We did not give any tasting notes to the whiskey, so I'll do that real quick. I'll let you if you want to. Do you have any tasting notes on this?
Yes, it is so good. Irish whiskeys are so underrated. Don't you think?
Well, they get overshadowed by the Scotches.
Nobody ever talks about it. Yeah, it's like, but they are so good.
They are.
This one to me is got some nice floral, like sweet notes to it. It's very smooth, super easy to drink. That's kind of like Irish whiskeys. They're never harsh. None of the ones that I've had. They're all easy to drink, really easy to start off on if you're just trying to like get into the whiskey drinking scene, which is a great idea, in my opinion. But what do you think?
Yeah, I was thinking that was hilarious.
A lot of things I say.
Yeah, that's debatable. I think that it's very lemony. I get some lemon to it.
Is lemony a word?
Lemon-ish.
Lemon-like?
Lemon-like. Yeah, Father O'Brien will give me a hard time about that because I think I said something last time and I just said the word and ended it with E, and he was like, "That is not a word."
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, Father O'Brien.
Words are hard.
Yeah, words are hard. They're hard. So here with Father Nesbitt, and so we're going to talk about. We had an episode recently on the vocation to the priesthood with Father Pratt. He's the vocations director of the Diocese of Tulsa. Yes. And so we discussed, the importance of your vocation, especially to the priesthood, how we need holy, good, virtuous men entering the seminary, even if they're not sure that they should become a priest. It's always good to go, and you're going to learn. Yes. And it's ultimately, if you're called to the vocation of marriage, it's only going to help you be a better husband.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the process of the vocation of let's say I'm a 21-year-old guy and I'm considering joining the monastery.
Why don't you tell us, how did you discern your vocation?
That's a better.
Sure. I went to Thomas Aquinas College in California. It's a very small, very Catholic school, so I was allowed
in California.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
They have Catholics there.
Some.
Okay.
So there, I was allowed to. My faith was supported. It wasn't attacked. It wasn't a battle to do that. So there's mass 3 or 4 times a day, and confession before and after, and holy hours every day, and so there's a good environment to pray. And so at some point, I guess probably the beginning of my junior year, I just naturally thought of what I was going to do with the rest of my life, and so I just prayed, "Well, God, what is your will?" and just took that approach. And it wasn't too long, and he wasn't too long in answering me. So maybe a couple weeks, a month, then I just had a very strong desire to serve the Lord and be dedicated to Him. Whereas before, I guess just the summer before, the vocations director of my diocese called me up because somebody gave me his name and then asked me. I said, "Well, I don't think I'm called to the priesthood. I'm open. I think I know I'm where I'm supposed to be in my life," and so just taking it one step at a time.
Yeah.
So after that, then I thought, well, yes, I'm called to serve the Lord in some way. Immediately comes to my mind the priesthood, but then just continue to pray and reading about the religious life. I thought, well, no, this is probably not right, exactly the priesthood, but the religious life. So then that kind of started me on the path of reading about it, consulting with priests and other religious, and visiting places. So that's how it came about for me.
It seems that here at Clear Creek, there are, when you get here, you have maybe certain expectations, and then when you go to Mass, like if you go to High Mass, all the monks are, come in, and you realize there are a lot of young guys here.
Yeah.
I like how many under 50-year-olds? I mean, there's quite a few, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be able to count under. If you said under 50,
the vast majority are under 50.
Yes, we had a group of founders that came from France. Most of them are in their mid-60s, and then after that, we have a few 50s, a couple 50s or 60, and then so many though are 30, 20s, 30s.
I tell people that you guys look more like a fraternity than because I think in people's minds they think of a monastery full of monks. They kind of think of old men, sort of like the saints that we know that were monks. They're always old in their pictures, Yeah. So I think when you come out here and you see, wow, there's so much youth, and it just so I think it catches people off guard.
Yes, and partly too because many religious orders are kind of in a decline, so there aren't very many vocations, but men and young men, as you know, probably are attracted to challenges and to a rigorous and disciplined life. So maintaining that has been a blessing for us from as a community.
So let's talk about that, because I think there's some vocation directors might take the approach that, being a priest is a wonderful life. You'll have very few bad days, and they make it sound so easy. And it's like, well, I don't want that.
That's right.
But I think Clear Creek is a good example of, if you take the opposite approach and you say, this is going to be really hard, it's going to be a challenge. Walk us through the day, just the routine of your average day.
Yeah, the average day would be you wake up at 4:50 and you get ready.
A.M.
A.M.
Okay. 4:50 a.m.
4:50 a.m. And so you get ready and go down to the church to pray before Matins, the first office, which is at 5:15. And then right after Matins is the second office, Lauds. And then right after Lauds, we have Low Mass. And after Low Mass, we have 20 minutes of Thanksgiving for receiving the Eucharist. And at that point, you might have some free time to go back up to your cell and make your bed and things like that. So it's about 7:40, 7:30, 7:40. And then at 8 a.m., you have the Office of Prime, after which we have breakfast, so about 8:30 or so. And as you can already see, the canonical hours of prayers, which are singing the psalms and hymns and then some official prayers, those give the structure to our day. And so after breakfast, you have a time of Lectio Divina, reading the scriptures, until High Mass at 10 a.m., which is preceded by Terce. So there's another office right before Mass. After Mass, if you're still in your formation, you do studies. Otherwise, you do some work. And then you have another office, 12:50. Right after is lunch. After that is our recreation time, which is finished by another prayer of known.
What do you do in your recreation time?
Just talk. We walk around our property and talk. Unless it's raining, we might walk in the cloister, which is covered. Or
So you guys don't have board games, or?
Not really. We do maybe have sometimes some brothers that play chess. Takes a while. So it's not very conducive to a shorter period of recreation.
Speed chess. Yeah.
If I were a chess fan, maybe
I'll get you guys a chess clock.
A few of the monks would be happy.
Okay. That's enough.
Yeah. So then after known is a period of work. So that's, known's at about 2:50, ends at about 2:50, and then you work until either 5:15 or 5:30, and then you go do your own mental prayer or silent prayer before Vespers at 6. After Vespers, then you have a period for spiritual reading or study of theology, reading the Fathers. And then we have dinner, 7:30. After dinner, most of the monks say the Rosary. Some might have said it at other times if they have duties after that. And then there's Compline, 8:30. And after that, you go to bed. Yeah, so with, I guess, after Compline, you can pray too. You have to be in bed by 9:45. So 4:50 to 9:45, broken up by the Psalms, singing the Psalms. So it's a well-ordered day, and it passes quickly because you're always going back to the church and praying the Psalms and then doing some work and then going back. So it's like you're filling your time in between praising God with study or work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's like one of the beautiful paradoxes of Catholicism is the idea of being obedient actually gives you so much freedom. Like you said, throughout the day passes so quickly. And it's because everything is so ordered that you don't have to worry or be concerned about outside things or like things that come in from the outside world, or what am I going to do with my time at 7? Yeah. You already know from now until eternity. That is what everybody at Clear Creek will be doing. Yeah,
I think somebody once asked Father Abbot, "Well, what do you do with your free time, or do you have free time?" He says, "I don't have free time, but I'm free all the time." He's
nice.
Yes.
So.
Touché. Well, so you're living this life, and you pray in Latin. Mm-hmm. That was my question. I was trying to remember. I had it. Why do you guys do your prayers in Latin?
I guess just to preserve the tradition of the church, and then as Benedictines, I guess our charism is to do the liturgy well, which implies Gregorian chant. So Gregorian chant's in Latin, so keep Gregorian chant, keep Latin.
Mm-hmm.
And then just also it connects you with so much of our history and tradition as the Catholic Church. Many of the fathers wrote in Latin, so then you can have a direct access to their works as well, and that can nourish your prayer and spiritual life. So.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it seems like that Latin, because it is the language of the language of the church.
Yeah.
English is a tough language because it can be interpreted in so many different ways. Latin, at least you understand exactly what St. Thomas of Aquinas is saying in the Summa, because Latin isn't changing.
Yeah, that's right.
So when we get back, we're going to continue this conversation here with about 40 of our friends at Clear Creek Abbey in Hobart, Oklahoma. We're on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
So raise your glass.
Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. I'm David Niles, here with Adam Minahan and Brother Nesbitt.
Father Nesbitt.
We're drinking a whiskey that I think has really lived up to its reputation.
What is the reputation?
I've heard good things about Quiet Man whiskey.
Okay.
And I am here today to affirm those good things that I have heard. It is very good. We're talking with Father Nesbitt about the vocation of the religious life, specifically living as a Benedictine monk. Father, one of the questions that has come to us from the audience, which I think is a great question, is what about the beard? Are there any monks? Are you guys allowed to have beards? You don't have a beard.
Here, we are not allowed to have beards. Other monasteries, they do have beards. So the history of that is mostly unknown to me. I know that even by the 800s, there are kind of regulations to not have beards. I've heard people say it's a Roman thing, perhaps. Cleanliness, orderliness, I'm not sure. Some have also maybe tied it to priests, the clerical state, having more priests as monks. For a long time, priests weren't allowed to have beards or mustaches or anything like that. Perhaps because they had to consume the host, drink the chalice. I'm not sure. So here it's just the rule. You shave every day. And some monasteries, they grow beards.
Yeah.
So
How often do you guys have to cut your hair? You all have the same buzz cut.
Once a month. And so that's the tonsure, another exterior sign of consecration to God.
Yeah.
So the Eastern monks did this, just shave the head, which comes from the secular world where they shaved the head of slaves. So then the monks took that up as a sign, I guess, of being slaves of God and humility.
Yeah.
And then that eventually worked its way into the Roman Church, where the priests all had to have a tonsure before they entered, their orders. So,
do you guys cut your own hair?
Yes, that is one of the monks or two of the monks cuts all the others' hair.
Okay, so you don't buzz your own head,
Nope.
but
Somebody's there and does it for you.
Nice. Okay, so what is the difference between a parish priest and a Benedictine monk?
Yes, the parish priest is called to lead the people of God. I guess he has a specific a portion of people of God assigned him, and so he gives them sacraments, teaches them, leads them to holiness. The Benedictine monk is separated from the world, so his job is to pray for the church and for the coming of the kingdom of God. And so normally they don't have that care of souls. And so we here don't do parish work because we're contemplative monks. Some Benedictine monasteries might send a few of the priests to do that, but their main work is prayer. And then those hours of the day that I spoke about, that's kind of their focus.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But not cloistered.
No, I guess we are cloistered in a way. Anytime you leave the enclosure, you get the blessing of Father Abbot, and he's the one who gives you permission or not to leave the enclosure. But it's not the same as nuns, where some nuns can't ever leave their enclosure.
Right. Okay.
So because we're separated from the world, we have an enclosure and a cloister, and we try not to go out of that as best we can.
Yeah. So you mentioned that the parish priest has, he's got his flock, specific souls that he's looking after. One analogy that kind of comes to mind is the whole blessed the woman who never had any children. She has more children than the woman. Do you think that there's a comparison here? Because you guys, you don't have like these people that you're looking after, but in a way, your prayers, you're praying for the world,
Yes.
right? So I live here in the diocese. I feel like people of the Diocese of Tulsa benefit in a special way from you guys being here.
Yes.
What do you think? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I guess that's one of the purposes of a monastery, to provide kind of spiritual power for the church, for those who are out there doing the work. They need the grace of God to do anything worthwhile. And so then those who are dedicated to God and serving Him are going to bring that down and be conduits in some unknown way to whoever God wants to give His grace to. So that's always part of it. Intercessory prayer, and then just the life of holiness itself is going to bring God's blessing on the world. So it is apostolic. The Pope has said we all have to be missionaries. The way we do that is by praying and striving after holiness. And then those official prayers of the church, the hours, they're for the church, so it's for everybody. Those who can't be praying, we're praying for them.
Okay, so here at Clear Creek, and in Benedictine orders, I assume in general, there are two types of monks. There's the choir monks, like yourself, who are typically priests.
Yes.
And then there's the lay brothers, who typically are not priests. Can they be priests?
No.
No, they cannot be priests.
Lay brothers.
Okay, so if one is discerning the religious life, how do you discern which of those types of monks God's calling you?
Yeah, I guess there's many ways, but the primary call is that call to the religious life, to be separate from the world, to be dedicated to prayer. And after that, maybe as a good addition, some will be ordained priests. And that process is for the individual entering, does he think he has a vocation or not? Those who don't have a vocation to priesthood, then they'll just be brothers. And there are indications of that. Some might not want to do the studies necessary or learn Latin, or some prefer to do more work with their hands than the longer hours in the choir. So it's kind of up to the personal dispositions of the candidate, and then also the decision of the superiors. Would he make a good priest? Do we need more brothers or priests? So there's kind of a back and forth, as with any vocation. You might feel you have a calling, but in the end, it has to be the church that accepts and approves that.
So you guys, you're all like phenomenal singers. Speaking of choir, like what if someone's saying, I feel very called to religious life, but I'm the worst singer on the planet. Is that an indication that maybe you're called to be a lay brother? Like you just haven't been given the talents, that...
Yeah, well, you can work on it. We'll see. God's grace and your efforts might produce something acceptable.
Sure.
Yeah.
What about, we've been saying the word abbot a lot. Maybe people don't know what the abbot is. Explain that to us.
Sure. The abbot is the head of the monastery, and abbot comes from Abba, father. So he's the father of the monastery and takes care of all the monks. And so he's the superior, and monastic tradition, the Benedictine tradition especially, has given the abbot the signs, insignia of a bishop, because he, in a way, holds the place of the bishop in this monastery. He has the jurisdiction over his monks and what goes on in his monastery, and not the bishop. So he has the crozier and the ring and the pectoral cross and the mitre to indicate that he is the shepherd of this particular monastery. But he's not a bishop. He's also only ordained a priest. And then because obedience plays such a large role in the Benedictine life, you need somebody to stand in the place of Christ, in the place of God, to obey, just to gain that merit of obedience.
Sure.
And so both lay brothers and choir brothers are all under the vow of obedience to the abbot?
Yes.
So speaking of the evangelical councils, you guys have the what I presume are the ordinary ones, poverty, chastity, obedience, but you also take a vow of stability. Is that correct?
Correct.
Can you talk about what that means?
That means that you vow to stay in this community until you die, and there can be exceptions. The main one would be when the monastery grows by the grace of God and needs to found a new monastery. Then the abbot will send a group, and their obedience kind of trumps that vow of stability. And then there's the lesser part of, like I said before, remaining in the enclosure, not going out into the world, not seeking occasions to return home or things like that. So we also don't visit our family. They come here and visit us a few times a year.
Do you ever get, like, what if they're on their deathbed? Do you get, is that kind of like the one exception?
Yes. So a wedding or the death of an immediate family member is a usual exception to that rule, where they'd visit home or attend that.
Okay.
Interesting.
We only have a few minutes left. Is there any other questions that you have specifically? I don't want to cut you off.
What is your favorite thing about being a Benedictine monk?
I guess singing the praises of God all day long, participating in the liturgy. Yes.
So you have all this rigid prayer life. Like, how much time do you have of just your own prayer life? Like, you're praying with everybody else, but how much of like unstructured prayer? Yeah.
So there's a mandated half an hour a day of that. I would say the rosary in a way can be that. You're on your own, you're praying it individually, following the mysteries. And then whatever time you can carve out before matins, some, get down there quickly after 4:50. So maybe from 5 to 5:15 you're praying. And then after Compline, you have to be in bed by 9:45. So maybe 20 minutes after that time. And then I guess the ideal, though, of the monk is to pray always, as our Lord exhorts us in the Gospel. So to always be attentive to God and coming back to that, whether it's just a short prayer here and there, Jesus, Mary, Joseph, I love you, save souls, things like that. So to make your whole day a life of prayer, and whatever you do being offered up to God as a work done in His service. So that's
excellent.
You should pray always.
Without ceasing.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Father Nesbitt, for joining us.
You're welcome.
We've been drinking the Quiet Man today. Our man gear was the Habit. It's been an awesome episode. We're got another evening here at Clear Creek Abbey. We're on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
So raise your glass and cheers to Jesus.